Yes, that's main. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you to the organizers for having invited the Commission here to present the work we are doing in this field. Today I will mention two studies that we carried out recently. One I will only mention shortly because it's partly related to the objective of this forum, and that is the study on GHG reporting and corporate carbon disclosure. And the other one that we carried out is more on product carbon footprint, and that I will give more information about that. Why the Commission decided to look at these issues? Well, basically, we had the Council in 2008 that in the conclusion related to the adoption of the Sustainable Consumption and Production Action Plan asked the Commission basically to do two things. One was to look at the carbon audits for organization, and the other one was to look at carbon footprint of products. And the councils asked us to look at the experiences in member states, take stock of that, and see if there is the need to work at development of a common voluntary methodology on these two issues. This is the starting point where we started at. Now things are developing because the policy scenarios and the policy reality is an ever-changing reality. So things are also changing into that direction, and I will explain you in which sense. So the first study is the GHG emission reporting. It was carried out by ERM's consultants. The final report is not available yet, but it will become available in the coming weeks. We are finalizing the last comments. We had a first draft report presented to the Commission in July 2010. There was also a stakeholder meeting who took place in Brussels in July 2010. Basically, there were three objectives for this study. One was to look at the different methodologies, both in Europe and outside Europe, related to GHG reporting. So the consultants identified around 80 different methodologies. 30 of them were described, and 9 of them were analyzed more in detail, according to a number of criteria for comparisons that I will describe you shortly after. Then there was also an analysis of risk and benefits of GHG reporting, and also an analysis of which could be possible future policy scenarios where the Commission could be involved in. I want to make clear something also as a link to something that was mentioned in the morning. The Commission is doing this exercise not as DG Environment only, but we are doing that with several DGs involved. In particular, the study on GHG reporting and the study on product carbon footprint is strictly is followed by DG Environment, but also by DG Klima and also by the GRC. And it is because we see potential overlaps and also a lot of synergies between the two different schemes. So we are already looking closely when and to what extent the two different approaches will be merged. So I mentioned that there were a number of criteria against which the 30 methodologies were compared, and we took some lessons from there in order to see where there is a work to be done if we are going to develop a common methodology. So, for example, we noticed that mostly none of them are providing guidance for SMEs, that only a third of them requires verification or assurances, that a lot of them have allow for user interpretation that could be considered as a good thing from one side, but on the other side it increased the shape of the curve that was presented this morning by Procter & Gamble. So if you're looking for consistency and reproducibility of results, then the freedom is not really what you're looking for. Which are the initial conclusions of this GHG reporting study? We acknowledge that there are a number of methods used in different regions, and that the methods does not make an easy life for people who want to compare results applying to a certain company. There is an evident lack of standardization on that, on the current methodologies existing, and that makes comparison difficult. And there are also a minority of initiatives that provides incentives, like financial penalties or rewards. This is for the GHG reporting. Now the main issue that we are looking at today and tomorrow, the product carbon footprint. The study, again, is not yet available in its final version, but it will be in a couple of weeks' time. I received last week the final version. I have to acknowledge that two of the authors are sitting here with us, is Anthony and Eric from Ernst & Young, so they will be able to provide more technical information on the study if you like. We had a stakeholder meeting organized last 22nd September in Brussels. The draft report is already available for you to read. I put the link. Just as a disclaimer, that report may change in its final version, so you are free to download it now, but if you will be patient for a couple of weeks more, you will get the final report at the same link. And at the same link, you will also find all the presentations that were delivered during the stakeholder meeting, and we will also upload there all the feedbacks we got from the different participants. Now, something that happened after the 2008 Council resolution was that the former Commissioner Monti produced an interesting report in the framework of the revision of the Single Market Act. And this report is called A New Strategy for Single Market. And there are two lines in that report that are particularly relevant for us today. And it is where Mario Monti says, the introduction at national level of green products labels should be avoided, as this risks fragmenting the market. So it's the internal market issue, and to some extent it's also the international trade issue. Probably Mario Monti was faced with a slide like this that only looks at carbon labels. So do we really need another label? So there is an issue in reducing the amount of labels that are existing nowadays. In order to have some more insights into that, we commissioned this study. Ernst & Young consultants delivered it to us, and basically we wanted to explore which are the current methodologies. So it's essentially a mapping exercise. It looks on one side at the methodological issues. It gives us insights about where are the difference and where are the similarities among the different schemes currently used or at drafting stage in Europe and worldwide. And it also gives us some information on which would be the possible implication at policy-making stage. And there it is clear that the tool and the policy are closely related. It does not make sense for us to develop a tool in a black box without linking it already to which would be the possible use of that tool. So this is the kind of reasoning that we are now doing to see which are the tool available, how we can work, if we will work on developing a common methodologies, already having in mind the different possible applications. And this study is one part of the information, of course, that we will use, but we have several other sources of information, and we have our member states and stakeholders that will be consulted on that. Okay, this I mentioned already. The approach that was used in this study is very similar to the previous one. So they identified a number of methodologies that were screened against a number of criteria and some key issues that were maturity and acceptance of the methodology, ease of use and cost, reliability and robustness, consistencies, and suitability for EU-wide implementation. And again, they looked both at EU and outside EU. They will also look at methodologies that are not really product carbon footprint, but that have some interesting features that we could look at in order to improve the existing approaches, like, for example, the food labeling scheme in Sweden. As I mentioned, they also provide us some information on the policy implementation, possible solutions. They differentiate between internal use and communication to consumers, voluntary versus mandatory, and how you provide the information if it is a single figure, if it is a grid system like we have in the energy-related products or other options. And they identified a number of scenarios, and they gave us information based on the way in which they score the methodologies, which is the best methodology or the best aggregation of methodologies in order to provide that policy answer. But today I will focus my analysis on the methodological part. I will not enter, for lack of time, into the policy scenario analysis. They looked at a very high number of methodologies, but they then selected the 11th methodologies that were most relevant according to their criteria, and here you see the list. You will see that there are some already existing and quite developed methodologies like PAS, like the Korean, the Japan methodology, and there are some others that are at an advanced drafting stage, the GHG protocol, the ISO, the BP that is finalized, but they are still working on the PCR part, but Sylvain will tell us more after my speech. And there are also other approaches like the Sustainability Consortium Walmart approach. So what was one of the interesting results from the methodological point of view? They highlighted where there is consensus, where we need to work in order to have further consensus. One of the results that is particularly relevant for us as policymakers is that it seems to be quite a consensus that carbon footprint and looking at carbon is important for some product category. It may be not the most important information for other products and other sectors. And there is also looking at the feedback we got from a number of stakeholders, they are really pushing us in order to enlarge our approach and move from carbon to also other potential impacts. But carbon is an excellent starting point because carbon is where we already have some political momentum and is also where we have a lot of information already available. So I was kind of smiling when this morning people were saying it's difficult to get data on carbon. Just imagine how difficult it will be to get data for all the other impacts. It's going to be a nightmare. Far from that, other interesting information. The functional unit, everybody agrees that we need a functional unit approach. There is quite a consensus what is a functional unit. Probably when we will come at the stage where we have to define the functional unit, then we will see that if there is a PCR-like approach, that is the stage where a number of those issues can be solved. And I'm thinking about the functional unit, but I'm also thinking about some of the issues that we discussed this morning. Data quality. Data quality is fundamental. It's not just data availability, it's really data quality. And there is everybody agrees that they are important. Where people start to disagree is how you differentiate between primary and secondary data, and which are the sources of data that are good and which are the sources of data that are not that good. In that respect, the Commission is working. We have been working a lot in the past 5 years together with people in JRC in order to approach that, in order to define which are the best practices for life cycle assessment according to the European Commission. And people in JRC came out with what is called the ILCD handbook, where it's really for us the best available practice for LCA to be used for policy making, but also for business-to-business relations. And in there are some approaches to how to deal with quality data. I think for us what is important really is that data respond to certain quality criteria. Then if they are primary or they are secondary data, it's less important if they respect those criteria. And whichever database provides the data, it's not important for us. The Commission is not trying to produce its own database. What is important for us is that whatever data it's used, it is a quality data. At the same time, we have to face the reality that people need data, and need data easily available and possible for free. So another option that could be considered in the future is to consider the possibility of having a public repository for life cycle data available for everybody. We started to work on that to see how it works, again with the JRC, because together with the ILCD, they also developed what is called now the ELCD, that is European Life Cycle Data Network. And basically what is there, it's they develop a link to Industrial Association, European Industrial Association, and they ask in the European Industrial Association to provide their data at aggregated level, so they have no confidentiality issues, but public data and independently peer review data according to the quality requirements that they defined. So possibly that could be a way to have a public repository data where people can directly take those secondary data, having the reassurance that those data have been independently peer reviewed and address the quality requirements set up by the Commission. There is a kind of consensus that uncertainty is important. Of course, and I agree with Laura and with all the people who presented this morning, we need to define rules and we need to set up procedures how to address uncertainty in the studies. There is consensus that GHG offset should be calculated and reported separately. And there is also consensus that the PCF should look at cradle to grave unless it is justified and specifically mentioned when it makes sense to have a cradle to gate approach. Where there is not consensus, according to our consultants, on the cutoff criteria, because there are different methodologies that some have 1%, some have 5%, some do not have anything. So on that, I think there is work to be done. On the use phase, again, we all acknowledge that the use phase can be the most important part for some products, and it should be dealt with consistently in any methodology. It is not yet the case. Allocation is not a big issue. I mean, the LCA community has been discussing that for the last 40 years, and they didn't find a consensus yet. So maybe we will find it in the next 40 years. And then there is the land use and the biogenic carbon accounting, where things are moving. A couple of weeks ago, there was an interesting meeting in ISPRA organized by GRC, where a lot of experts in the biogenic and carbon storage were gathered around the same table. It was a very interesting two-day discussion, and I think there were some cultural and methodological developments that probably will lead us to have a common position in the coming months. So, if I have to sum up the main finding of the study acknowledged that a lot of has been done and a lot of achievements has been done in the last 2 years. There are the different schemes are good according to several features. There is not a very good scheme and a very bad one. They are all good because they address a part of the picture in the right way. There is not yet the perfect scheme, if ever it will exist, the perfect scheme. But there are a lot of them that are very good, solid, and we can look at and try to improve to the extent possible. And another recommendation is that definitely Europe needs an implementation, needs an harmonization because of also the internal market issues and other policy consistency issues. According to the consultants, none of the existing methodology has been sufficiently tested up to now in order to provide definitive information on that. And they also say that, again, according to them, the current schemes are not mature enough for mandatory implementation of a product carbon footprint in Europe. They say that we need more, of course, we need more harmonization, we need more testing, and they suggest that the PCR approach should be followed. What else they say? Of course, they suggest us to look closely at what GHG and ISO are doing, but we are already doing that because we are sitting in the steering committee of the GHG protocol, and we are also part of the work that ISO is doing. And we have to build on our mother methodology, PAS 2050, and something we are also doing. We are in very close contact with Maureen and all the other people working there. And again, they stress that we should start from carbon but not stop at carbon and enlarge it to all the other environmental impact where it makes sense, of course. So, what will happen now? As I mentioned, the studies will be made public in the coming weeks. We are going to present to member states the results of this study next week, 28th of October. We have a meeting in the morning. We'll present the product carbon footprint. In the afternoon, we'll present the GHG reporting to member states, and we will ask them basically in which direction we have to go. And based on what member states will tell us, we may start to work with JRC in ISPRA in order to develop such technical guidance both for GHG and for environmental footprint. And the fact that the same people will be working in both methodologies, if any work on methodology will be done, it's also a kind of assurance that the overlappings and the synergies will be exploited in the best way possible. And then we will see what happens next. But which are the options that we will have? Basically, we have 4 options, as we see it now, today, 20th of October 2010. We have the options that I may like for several reasons, that is do nothing. We have another option that is to work as facilitator of the already existing convergence work that is because we know that already the different methodologies are doing this convergence work, and so we may act as facilitator where needed. We may develop a common European methodology in cooperation with member states and stakeholders. This is, I want to make it clear, if any work will be done, it will not be done in a closed office in Brussels, but will be done really in a shared and inclusive way. Or another option that is also interesting, according to me, is that we may try to fill the gap, if there is a gap, in providing more support in order to develop PCR and sector guidance where needed. As I mentioned, DG Environment is not working alone there. I wanted to put on a slide the people who are working on this project. I'm more following the environmental part, the environmental product footprint part. My colleague Imola Bedo is the policy officer working on GHG reporting, but of course DG Klima is there, JRC is there, DG Internal Market is there, DG International Trade is there, DG Enterprise is there. It's really the Commission looking at that, it's not just one department. And I thank you very much for your attention.